What happened in the Nigerian Senate this week may quietly shape the future of elections in Nigeria and possibly the fate of 2027 general elections. Because while the Senate insists it did not reject electronic transmission of results, millions of Nigerians heard something different. And when trust collapses, democracy doesn't fall with a bang. It dies slowly in daylight. Today we ask the hard questions. What exactly did the Nigerian Senate do? Why does electronic transmission of result matters? And who truly benefits from ambiguity in elections? The Senate passed the Electoral Act 2022 Amendment Bill 2026 after intense pressure from the media, civil society, and political stakeholders. But buried inside that passage was a critical decision: a proposed amendment to Clause 60, subsection 3, which would have made mandatory real-time electronic transmission of results from polling units to the IREF portal. It was rejected. Let's be clear what that rejected clause meant. It would have required presiding officers to sign and stamp from E68A, get agents' counter signatures, and immediately upload the results to RF. No delays, no detours, no collation center miracles. Instead, the Senate retained the old wording. The presiding officer shall transmit results in a manner prescribed by INEC in quote. That sentence sounds harmless, but in Nigerian politics, ambiguity is power. Let's address the elephant in the room. Electronic transmission is not about technology, it is about trust. For decades, Nigerian elections have followed a similar pattern: votes counted correctly at polling units and the results change on the road. Figures mutate at collation centers and democracy bleeds quietly. Real-time electronic transmission closes that window. Once results are uploaded from the polling unit, you can't rewrite them later. You can't substitute figures. You can't explain discrepancies with logistical challenges in quotes. That is why citizens demanded it after 2023. That is why opposition parties insist on it. And that is why incumbents fear it. Technology does not ring elections, people do. And technology limits what people can get away with. Now, here is where things get interesting and confusing at the same time. The Senate retained beavers for accreditation, rejected electronically generated voter identification, and insisted on PVCs at polling units. Now, here is where things get interesting and confusing. The Senate retained beavers for accreditation, rejected electronically generated voter identification, insisted on PVCs at polling units. So let's pause and think. We trust beavers to accredit voters, upload results to IREF, power mock elections, but we don't trust electronics enough to make result transmission mandatory. That contradiction alone raises eyebrows. If electronics are reliable enough to verify voters, why are they suddenly unreliable when it's time to protect votes? The Senate also rejected a proposed 10-year jail term for PVC traders. Instead, it reduced jail term to 2 years and increased fine to 5 million naira in a country where votes are bought openly. None of this is accidental. What followed was political outrage across party lines for Nigerians. Atiku Abubakar called it a calculated assault on transparency and accused the Senate of protecting incumbents. His tweet reads, "The decision of the Nigerian Senate to reject the real-time electronic transmission of election results is a deliberate assault on electoral transparency. This ill-advised action represents a grave setback for electoral reform and a calculated blow against transparency, credibility, and public trust in Nigeria's democratic process. At a time when democracies across the world are strengthening their electoral systems through technology, the Nigerian Senate has chosen to cling to opacity, protect loopholes, and preserve a system that has historically enabled manipulation, tampering, and post-election disputes. Real-time electronic transmission of results is not a partisan demand, it is a democratic safeguard. It reduces human interference, limits result manipulation, and ensures that the will of the voter expressed at the polling unit is faithfully reflected in the final outcome. To reject it and adopt what is obviously a face-saving provision of the 2022 Act on Electronic Transmission of Results is to signal an unwillingness to submit elections to public scrutiny. This decision raises troubling questions about the commitment of the ruling party to free and fair credible elections in 2027. Nigerians cannot ignore the pattern. Every reform that strengthens transparency is resisted, while every ambiguity that benefits incumbency is preserved. I have consistently maintained that democracy must evolve with time, technology, and the legitimate expectation of people. Elections must be decided by voters, not by manual delays, backroom alterations, procedural excuses, or even by courts, which section is shamelessly standing on the mandate of the incumbents. I call on Nigerians, civil society organizations, the media, and international community to take note of the regression and to continue demanding an electoral system that reflects modern democratic standards. Nigeria deserves elections that are transparent, verifiable, and beyond manipulation. Anything less is an injustice to the electorate and a betrayal of democracy. AA Atiku Abubakar. The Labour Party described the situation as shameful betrayal in quotes and one of the most anti-people decisions since 1999. The PDP declared it a blow to democratic consolidation and proved the legislature is unwilling to protect electoral integrity. Chief Bode George, an engineer himself, said the decision was disgusting, especially in a world racing toward digital governance. When opposition figures disagree on everything but agree on this, it tells you something is wrong. Then came the Senate President's clarification. Godswill Akpabio insisted, in quotes, "We did not reject electronic transmission. We retained the 2022 provisions." Technically, he may be correct, but politically, perception is everything. Nigerians weren't asking for permission to transmit results. They were demanding guarantees, and guarantees require mandatory language, not discretion. When the law says "shall" as perceived by INEC in quotes, future government can still manipulate the rules. Trust is not built on technicality, it is built on clarity. It increasingly appears that the APC-led administration and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu are jittery at the prospect of a truly free and fair election. Despite publicly preaching democracy, transparency, and reform, the actions coming out of Abuja suggest a leadership deeply uncomfortable with an electoral process it cannot fully control. From intense pressure on city governors to defect to the APC, to last-minute legislative maneuvers around Electoral Act, the signals are clear. Political consolidation is being prioritized over democratic competition. When power feels secure, it does not fear transparency, but when an administration begins to tighten the political space, weaken electoral safeguards, and blur the rules of engagement, it often betrays anxiety, not confidence. The rejection of mandatory real-time electronic transmission of results does not happen in isolation. It comes against the backdrop of a shrinking opposition space, strategic defection encouraged at the highest level, and a legislature widely perceived as compliant rather than independent. This pattern raises a troubling question. Why would a government confident in its popularity resist mechanisms designed to protect the people's votes? A ruling party that truly believes in its record welcomes scrutiny. It does not fear technology. It does not rely on ambiguity. History has shown, in Nigeria and beyond, that when incumbents begin to engineer advantage before the ballot is cast, it is rarely about strengthening democracy. It is about survival. And the danger here is not just electoral manipulation. The real danger is the erosion of public trust. Because once citizens begin to believe that elections are predetermined, participation collapses, legitimacy evaporates, and stability comes under strain. Nigeria has seen this movie before, and it never ends well. So let's ask the uncomfortable question: who benefits when results are not transmitted in real time? Collation centers remain powerful, legal ambiguity survives, not the voter, not democracy, not national unity. Ambiguity favors those already in power, and history teaches us something brutal. When people lose faith in the ballot, they explore other options. That's how democracies collapse. This is not fear mongering. This is a warning. Nigeria stands at a crossroad. The Senate still has time, the House still has a voice, and the President will still assent. But Nigerians are watching, and in 2027, the real danger will not be who wins, but whether Nigerians believe the process was fair. Because once legitimacy is lost, no mandate is strong enough to govern peacefully. Democracy does not demand perfection, it demands honesty. This is Impact Media. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Thank you for listening. I will see you again in the next video.